Okay. Okay, guys. So today we're gonna continue working on the speaking section. Can anyone tell me how many questions we have in the speaking section? There are
4.
exactly 4 questions. So we did question number 1 last week, and today we're gonna move on to question number 2. Okay. Remember that question 1 was the independent question, but starting in question 2, we'll get all of the integrated tasks, which means that it won't be just you giving your opinion. You actually have to base your response on something else. You have to summarize something, or something that you read, something that you hear, certain content that they give you or that they provide. Okay, so let's take a look at question number 2 today. Okay, first of all, in order to remember question number 2, because 1 was the independent question, right? Pretty easy to remember is the independent one where you give your opinion. Now, question number 2, we're gonna call it the university question, right? Now, why is that? Because everything you have in task number 2 is gonna be around university life, okay? Now, before we do that, when I say university life, I mean university life in the US and how it works in the US. Because whether we like it or not, the way that university works is different here in our region in South America than it is in North America, right? In the US, in America. So can you guys think of any differences between life as a student here versus there? What could be one difference?
Maybe the part of the gym here in Bolivia. I don't know a university that has a gym, but in the United States, most of them have gym.
Okay, so yeah, that's true. Usually these facilities like gyms and things for recreation are not that common here in Bolivia, right? At least not in most universities. I don't know about other countries in the region, but yeah, that's true. But why is that? Any other differences you can think of?
Universities in the United States have rooms for their students on campus. And here we need to live with our parents to go to university or have an apartment of our own.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that's the number 1 difference, right? So like, for example, here we're used to, when you graduate from high school, you're still living with your parents until you graduate from university, right? So you graduate from high school, you start going to college, you still live with your parents, or maybe you go and live on your own, but we don't really have the option of living in the university, right? We don't have the option of living inside the universities. We don't have on-campus housing. But in US universities, then that is really an option for most students, right? And that's what the majority of students do. Once they finish high school, they usually go and live on their own, and they're very likely to live within the same university they're going to. So we don't have that here. Now, because of the fact that they live in the university, is that the university has to provide the students with a number of things that, right, like what Valentina was saying, like gyms. So if students are going to live in the universities, then they're going to need a lot of things that they don't need here, right? Like maybe medical services, security. They usually offer transport, both for in-campus housing and also for students who live off campus. The cafeterias are different. Well, libraries we have in here too. But in general, understanding how that works is going to help you, first of all, have some vocabulary related to university life. Like, for example, there are words that we're not familiarized with here, like maybe a dorm, right? Which is what the residencies where students live are called. So dormitories or dorms, you know? So those are words maybe that we wouldn't know unless we understand how the system works. So my first tip for this question is going to be always try to make sure that you have vocabulary related to university life and that you understand a bit of the structure or the system of the academic system in the US, okay? Because that's really needed. So any questions before we move on? Okay. Now, let's talk about this question specifically. What is it exactly that this question requires you to do? What are the instructions? How do you answer this question? Let's see. So the first thing, this is the format of the question. This is the format of the question, okay? Here's how you have to, here's what they're gonna ask you to do. First, the first step will be to read. So you will be reading a letter, basically. You will be reading the short text, which is something that you would normally read in the university's newspaper. So you will read this letter exactly for 45 seconds, okay? So you get 45 seconds to read the letter. After you read, you will have to hear a conversation. So they will ask you to listen to a conversation between two students from that university that are going to be talking about that letter that you just read. So you already have the context. You need to listen to this conversation about that letter. And finally, after you heard the conversation, after you read, you will hear the question and you will get 30 seconds to prepare your response in 1 minute exactly to answer the question and speak, okay? That is basically it. To summarize, first thing you read for 45 seconds, second, you listen to a conversation, 30 seconds to prepare, and 1 minute to speak. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions about that? No? Not really? Without further ado, let's just see an example. We're gonna do this one, okay? Do you remember how many seconds you had to read?
45.
45. So I'm gonna give you guys 45 seconds to read this announcement, to read this letter, and then we'll discuss. Please take a moment to read. Okay. So, can anyone tell me what this is about? What do they say here?
It says that it explains how sculpture courses are going to be discontinued because there are not enough people to take the course, and also the only sculpture professor is retiring this year, and it's not it doesn't make sense if they hire a new professor for a little a quantity of students. Yeah.
Okay, great, Henry. That's great. That's perfect. So nice. I like how you summarize this. So if you guys noticed, as Henry says, first of all, they talk about the fact that the sculpture process will be discontinued, right? They're gonna shut it down. So what is that? That is the first element that you will always have in these readings, which is the change. So no matter what, you will always have a change described in here. So something is going on in the university. They are maybe eliminating courses in this case. Maybe they are changing the menu of the cafeteria. Maybe they are like, I don't know, adding a new class. Maybe they are doing something with the bus service. Maybe they are hiring somebody for something. Maybe they're like renovating the dorms. There's always a change going on. And they're gonna announce, or they could also propose the change. Okay, they could announce it, like we have decided we're gonna do this, or they could propose it, as something to be considered. So, but you always have that change. Now, the second thing, as Henry says, Henry was using the word because, right? He was saying they're gonna do this because one, only a few students take these courses, there's a lack of interest, and two, the professor's retiring. So those are the two reasons supporting the change, right? And that's what you guys will always have here. So in this text that you read, you need to be able to identify those three elements. One, change, what is going on in the university, and the two reasons. So why is that happening? You always have two reasons. Okay, we're gonna underline the most important parts. We're gonna say, well, the change is that the sculpture program is being eliminated. Why? One, because there's a lack of students' interest. And two, the professor's retiring. So, is that okay? Do you guys get the idea of the reading? Yeah? One way to see it, and what I've noticed is that the structure never changes. Usually in the beginning, you have the change, the first sentence, and then if you divide what you have left into two, the first half is gonna go for the first reason, and the second one goes for the second. So it's as easy as dividing this into three, right? The first new sentence, and then breaking it down into two. Is that okay then? One more thing, you are allowed to take notes during this part of the test. So if you guys are gonna take notes, then at most you should be writing 5 words. The keywords here, what do you think? Can you guys tell me 3 keywords for this entire text? What can be the first? What would you guys say the keywords are? I'd say the first one is going to be a sculpture, right? So if you guys are going to take notes, then you should write down a sculpture. And since it's going to be discontinued, maybe you can cross it out. Right? You can do something like that so that you remember that the sculpture program is discontinued. Second would be interest, right? I'd say that's a keyword because students are supposedly not interested. And third would be retiring, your professor retiring, right? Maybe four words. And that's it. That's all you should have on your notes. Is that okay then? Do you have any questions before we listen to the conversation? All right. So what will you hear in the conversation? This is important. In the conversation, we said you'll hear 2 students, right? 2 students. Now, first of all, only one of these students is going to be important. In your response, when you're speaking, you're only going to have to talk about one of those 2 students. So the first thing you guys need to do is identify who the main student is in that conversation. How would you know which one is the main student? Because this main student is going to have a strong position about the change, a strong position, a strong opinion about what you read. This student could be either against the change Oh, I'm sorry. Not sharing my screen. So I was saying, need to go back. Okay, sorry. So this main student could be against the change and be like, that's a terrible idea. I don't like what they're doing. It's not going to work. Or the student could be in favor of the change and be like, well, I actually like what they're doing. I like their plan, right? I think it's a good thing. So you have these two options. The student could be completely against or in favor of the change. The first thing you do is identify who the student is. Now, why am I telling you this? You usually have one male and one female student. You need to identify if it's male or female student, the one that has the opinion. And as soon as you identify that, you need to write down in big letters, in capital letters, pronoun. So if it's the female student, if it's a girl, then you write down she. And if it's the guy that has the opinion, then you write down he on your notes. Okay? Second thing would be catch the opinion. So is this a student in favor or against the change? That is the second thing you need to identify when you're listening. And finally, you need to catch the two reasons, because this student will give you two other reasons why he or she is against or in favor of this change. They are usually gonna be connected to the reasons you had in the reading. So it's very likely that the student talks about the lack of students' interest and the professor retiring. So you need to take notes and get the main ideas, the main reasons, the opinion, and who the student is. Is that okay so far? Do you guys have any questions before we listen to the conversation? No? Everything's okay? Everything's clear? All right.
Excuse me, teacher. Can you repeat again the last explanation?
Okay. So I think last thing I said was I was summarizing a little bit. In the listening, you will hear two students speaking about this change, about this proposal or announcement that you read. One of them, only one of the two students is going to be the important one, because one of the students will have a strong opinion about that plan. So they could be in favor of the plan or against. So what you have to do, first of all, is identify if the student that has the opinion is male or female, because that's important for you to use your pronouns. Second, you need to identify the student's opinion about this change. So is the student in favor or against? And third, this student will give you other two reasons why they feel that way, right? So if they're in favor, they're going to give you two reasons in favor of the change. If they're against, they'll give you two reasons against the change. Most of the time, those reasons are going to be related to the ones you had in the reading. So everything's connected in here. And that's it. You need to take notes, and that's pretty much, Is that okay? Do you guys have any other questions? No? Nice. So now I'm going to play the conversation. Please get ready to take notes. Remember what we said, identify the opinion and the two reasons. So here we go.
Now listen to two students discussing the article.
Everything all right?
Yeah, I'm just upset about that article I showed you this morning.
Why? What's the big deal?
Well, as an art major, I think it's a big loss for the department. The university's got it all wrong.
What do you mean?
Well, the low enrollment isn't because art majors don't want to take these classes. Problem is, who has time to take them when there are so many other requirements?
I don't understand.
See, the classes they're eliminating are all optional. The required courses are mostly painting and drawing, and they take up all our time. What we really need are different requirements. Then art majors could take a better variety of classes, all the things we're interested in.
That makes sense. But the thing about the professor...
Well, that's true. But still, they're being drastic. If money's the problem, they could hire a part-time professor. Or most of the professors in the department have secondary fields.
Really?
Yeah, at least a few painting teachers are also great sculptors. I'm sure one of them could teach a class.
Okay. Okay, guys. So that was the conversation. Let's take a few notes. Let's discuss what we had there. Okay. So let's say that these are our notes. I think it's loading. Okay, sorry. Let's say these are our notes, okay? Remember we said from the reading, you don't really need to take so many notes and you don't have that much time. So let's say the change we said sculpture is discontinued. Reason 1 was lack of interest. And reason 2 was professor retired. Now, what about the conversation? You do have to have more notes for the conversation. So first of all, was it the male or the female student that had the opinion here? Who was the important student?
The female.
Exactly. It was the female student who had the opinion. So we're gonna write down she. And was she against or in favor of the change?
Against.
Exactly, she was against, right? So that's the first thing that you should have in your notes. She against, that's the opinion. Now, why was she against? What's the first reason she gives? What does she say first?
It says that sculpture program courses are mostly optional and students aren't, it's not because the students aren't interested in these courses, but they don't have time to take those classes. Since they are optional, they need to take another requirement courses.
Right. Yes, I don't think I could have explained it better. That's true. Exactly what the student says, right? Do you guys agree? Anything to add there? Nice. What about the second reason? What does she think?
Maybe
I'm sorry, David.
the girl said that she needs this course or no?
Okay. Are you sure that she needed this course? You know, most of the time they're going to be connected, or the student somehow is going to be responding to the reasons that we're giving in the reading. So she's got to say something about the professor retiring. So what does she say about that?
That they could hire a part-time teacher or other teachers in the university have secondary fields.
Okay, exactly. So yes, the university was implying that it wouldn't be efficient, right? They don't have the budget to hire another professor. So as a way to solve this problem, she says, so if that is the problem, then why don't they just hire a part-time professor or ask one of the other professors who have probably secondary fields to teach this class, right? So that's why she's against. So she definitely doesn't want the sculpture program to be eliminated. She doesn't want it shut down. So she gives 2 reasons why it shouldn't happen, right? That's it. Do you guys have any questions so far? This is a transcript, by the way. So as you can see, the structure is the same. In the first part, you hear the opinion. She says, I'm upset about this article. The university's got it all wrong. So that those words, I mean, they are negative words, right? So she's referring to the article in a negative way. That means she's against. And then we have the reason number 1. So who has time? Students don't have time. The required courses take up all of their time. And it's not that they're not interested, right? And the second one was what we said, they could hire a part-time professor or somebody else could have to teach these guys. So, okay, now what do we do? After you listen to the conversation, you will be hearing the question, right? So let's look at the question. This is the question. David, could you please read the question?
The woman expressed her opinion of the change that has been announced. State her opinion and explain her reason for holding that opinion.
So would you say that this question is asking you to summarize everything? Not really, right? They're focusing only on the woman who's the student. So basically they want you to summarize the conversation. They're saying the woman expresses her opinion. So you have to state her opinion, what she thinks, is she against, is she in favor? And you have to explain both reasons that she gives. Now, although they don't explicitly tell you to mention the reading, you have to at least give some context about like what the reading was about. And you have to show the relationship between the reading and the listening, okay? But at the end of the day, what they are saying is true. You need to focus on the conversation. So please avoid making the mistake of summarizing or trying to summarize the reading and wasting time there, because that's not what they're asking, okay? So what do we do? Let's see. How much time do you have to prepare?
50 seconds.
30 seconds, great. What do you guys think you could do during these 30 seconds? What would you do?
Maybe identify the reason.
Maybe identify the reason you said? Yeah, okay. That's actually a good reason. That's actually a good strategy. You know, when we take notes, we're not really thinking too much about what we're writing. We're just writing the few parts that we understand. We're just writing the words that we caught. So we're just writing without really thinking about what we're doing, because hopefully you're paying attention more to the content, right? You're trying to pay attention to what they're saying rather than focusing too much on your notes, hopefully. So at the end of the day, when you get your notes, and a problem that many students have, when they're speaking, they're looking at their notes, but they don't realize that their notes isn't just everything that they should use when they're speaking, right? Because if you just look at your notes, sometimes you won't even understand your notes, or sometimes you will have taken notes of specific details that are irrelevant to the task. So what you could do, one option, and as David suggests, you could take a look at your notes and start maybe highlighting, circling, marking the most important ideas, highlighting what, like a summary for the 2 reasons in your opinion, because that's what you need here. And you can start crossing out a few of your notes that you consider are irrelevant, are repetitive, or maybe that you don't understand. That's a really good strategy, actually, because as I was saying, that's a problem that some students have. Another problem that some students have that I personally had was I had too many notes and I wanted to say everything that I had on my notes. I ended up running out of time. So one thing you could do also is start like crossing out ideas that are not necessary for you to match, you know? So many things you could do. Other students like to start speaking already. So during these 30 seconds, they already start speaking and they start practicing what they're gonna say. And that way, when they get to the 60 seconds to the official time that you have to speak, to the time that is being recorded, then they already have an idea of how to structure the response, right? They already know how to form their sentences, how to express the ideas. So there are many options. My suggestion, practice using both many of them. And that way you're gonna see that which one works better for you, right? You're gonna notice what strategy works better. So practice doing different things using different strategies until you get to the right one, okay? Do you guys have any questions about that? Is that okay? Yes? Okay. Now, what happens with the 60 seconds that you have to speak? You have to answer this question, right? You have to do what they're saying. So how do we do that? I'm gonna give you guys a template, and I'm gonna say what I always say with the templates. Templates are there so that you start practicing with them. Templates are there so that you memorize the structure, you know what to say and where to say it and when to say it. But at the end of the day, the words are not what matters in the templates, but instead the structure. So if in this template you find a word that you don't like, a word that you find odd, that you don't know how to pronounce, or maybe that that you simply don't like, you're free to change that word, you know, that's fine. But I would really suggest that you keep the structure. This is honestly the best structure that you can use. And I had experience using this structure, and it is what works for all students, okay? So that is something that's not gonna change. The structure won't change depending on your needs or anything. This is something that you need to preserve, okay? The structure should be like this. So what do you do? How many seconds do you guys have for answering this? You have how many?
$60 seconds.
Exactly. You have 60 seconds or 1 minute to answer this question. So you remember that it doesn't go from 0 to 60, right? Your clock is gonna count down. So it starts in 60 and it finishes in 0. You go 60, 59, 58, 57, and so on. So you start your response in 60 seconds. The first thing that you guys have to have is an introduction. Okay, so when you start your response, first thing you do is you give an introduction. This introduction should be short, concise, quick, and it shouldn't last more than 10 to 15 seconds at most, okay? 15 seconds tops. But it is really ideal if you keep it down to 10 seconds. So in your introduction, what you're gonna do is basically first state the student's opinion. You're gonna tell me if the student is in favor or against the change. And second, you're gonna tell me what the change is. Okay, so this is a way to summarize the change and the student's opinion. How? You can use this phrase. You can say, the student in the conversation supports in case the student is in favor or is against the idea of, and then you summarize the change. So in this case, for example, you need to say, the student in the conversation is against the idea of eliminating the sculpture program, right? Which was the change. Careful with the grammar. Remember that after the preposition of, if you guys are gonna use a verb, which you will probably do, you need to use ing, right? Eliminating. Okay? Now, try to say the student in the conversation. Don't just say the student, because it can happen that you have two students and you have one student in the conversation and another one in the reading. So it's really important that you guys clarify whose student you're referring to, okay? So always say the student in the conversation, in this case, is against the idea of eliminating the sculpture problem. That won't take you more than 10 to 12, 15 seconds, maybe, like, you know, in an extreme case. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions about that introduction? No? Okay. So that's it, right? That's your introduction. Now, what do you do next? You are gonna finish, we said, in 10 to 15 seconds. So you should start the body of your response when the clock is in 50 to 45 seconds. And you're gonna spend around 20 to 25 seconds explaining the first reason. And when I say the first reason, I mean the reason that the student gives, okay? So you're gonna focus only on the student. You're gonna say, first of all, she explains that. Do you see how you have to have the right pronoun? Careful not to make mistakes. That's why you have it on your notes. And second, you need to use these reporting verbs because you are summarizing what somebody else said, right? Never take these ideas and use them as your own, right? You cannot say something like, first of all, students are interested. So that isn't your idea. That is what the student says. So you need to say, first of all, the student says that, the student explains that, the student states. I mean, you can use many verbs. There are many options, but you need to make sure that you give credit, okay? So you're gonna say, first of all, she explains that, and then you explain reason number one. One tip I'm gonna give you, in this space right here, I would suggest that you try to, I know that I said that you need to focus on the student, on the conversation, not on the lecture, not on the reading, sorry. But it'd be great if you can contrast it a little bit. So although you do have to focus more on the student, you still need to show the relationship that what the student says with what the reading said. So maybe you can do something like this. You can say, first of all, she explains that it isn't really that students are not interested, right? So when I say that, I'm not directly saying the reading says that students are not interested, but I'm implying that that's what the reading says, right? So try to implicitly contrast the two ideas. So first of all, she explains that it isn't really that students are not interested in taking these courses, but instead that they don't have enough time. And you can explain more, right? And explain more. Since the required courses are the ones that take up most of their time, and our major students don't really have the time to take the optional courses that they would like to take, right? That is the explanation. So that's it. That's the way that you explain the first reason, okay? Keep in mind what we talked about. Make sure that you use the right pronoun, that you use a reporting verb, that you show that contrast, and that you keep it simple too. It should last, how many seconds did we say?
20 to 25.
Exactly, 20 to 25. Ideally, if you, I mean, you know, I'm saying you should not spend more than 10 to 15 seconds in the intro, but the fewer seconds you spend in the introduction, then the more time you'll have to explain what is most important and what you need the most time for, which are the reasons, right? So it's all for you. If you're able to finish your introduction in 8 seconds, even better, you know, because you have more time to explain the most important ideas. So that is your first reason. And you do exactly the same for the second one. You will have this transition. You said, in addition, she believes that, and then you explain reason number two, right? Try to show the same contrast, and accommodate your response to the time you have. Remember that it doesn't work the other way around. Your time is not gonna change according to where you are in your response. You need to remember that. So one, it takes practice, getting used to spending the right amount of time in each part. And two, it also takes, I mean, effort from you to see and look at the screen and see the timer and see the clock, and see when you are finishing an idea, you need to see it and see if you have enough time to start the other. So it takes practice. That's the only thing. And that's it. The same goes for the second one. In addition, she believes that if the university doesn't have the budget to hire another professor, given that the professor is retiring, right? So I'm kind of implying what it was. What they could do is this and this. Okay? So, is that okay? Do you guys have any questions now? That is basically your response. One more thing. Do you need a conclusion? You don't, okay? The conclusion is, in the whole speaking section, is always optional. So you need to do the same as we were doing for task number 1. If you have time, if you have extra time, like the maximum, the maximum number of seconds that you could have would be like 10 seconds for extra time. So if you have 10 seconds, then you can fill it out with a conclusion, right? You can go longer if you have more time, or shorter if you don't have that much time. It depends. You could say things like some ideas, you could say, these are the 2 main reasons why the student is against the idea of, and then you can repeat, or you can say, this is why the student disagrees with the university's plan. This is why she doesn't feel that this idea is going to work, or these are the 2 reasons, or the 2 main reasons why she feels this way. Many things you can say according to the time. If you really have like 3 seconds, you can say, so that's why she feels that way, right? That's why she thinks. So that's it. But at the end of the day, remember, you don't need a conclusion. So it's only optional. Is that okay then? Do you guys have any questions? Okay, so I'm gonna go so that you can see how I manage my time. And then we'll try to do another one where the student is in favor, so that we can see both sides. And remember, tomorrow we'll be practicing. So let's see. Okay, I'm gonna use a template here. You can see the time I have here. The student in the conversation is against the idea of eliminating the sculpture program. First of all, she explains that it isn't really that students are not interested in taking this course, but instead they don't have the time to do it. Since most art majors are busy taking the required courses and don't really have the time to take the optional courses that they would like to take. Therefore, there are many students who want to take the sculpture courses, but are not able to due to time. In addition, she believes that if the professor is retiring this year, and if money is the problem, if the university doesn't have the budget to hire a new full-time professor, what they could do instead is hire a part-time professor to teach the class, or if not, they could ask another professor from the university who has a secondary field to teach this class, and that way the problem will be solved. These are the 2 reasons why she feels that way, right? So that's basically it. I wasn't exactly, I was actually maybe going a little bit too fast. I had more time than I was expecting for the first reason and less time in the second, but I try, and that's why I try to like fill out that time, right? In the first reason, I improvised and I expanded myself because I noticed that I have like 10 more seconds to go with the first reason. And in the second one, it was kind of the same, but it went faster. And I finished with that conclusion because I had like 3 or 4 seconds. It wasn't that much. So I had a short conclusion. Right? But that's it. It doesn't have to be perfect in order for you to have a good score. You just need to try to speak calmly. Everyone's nervous. That's normal because we care and we want to do it well. But the more you practice, the better you get. I'm not saying that you won't feel nervous anymore, but you'll get better in hiding that, right? And not letting it show. So that's it. That's pretty much it. What do you guys think? Do you have any questions now that you've heard a sample response to? No questions? Okay. So let's see. Let's do another one. Let me see which one we can do. Perhaps we can do this one. If I'm not mistaken, I think this one is different. So remember, this time we're gonna go a little bit faster. We're not gonna discuss that much. We're gonna go directly to the answer. You will now have 45 seconds to read this announcement.
Now, listen to two students discussing the article.
Jim, you're in the choir, right? What do you think about what they're doing next year? This article.
I really like it.
Yeah?
Yeah, the new director's right that it will motivate us.
How's that?
Well, some of the other schools are really good, so we'll really have to work hard to go up against them.
Yeah.
I mean, right now we don't rehearse more than once a week, but if we know we'd be competing with other schools, we probably rehearse more often and improve our singing a lot.
That's true. The more you practice, the better you get. So, what about what the article said about how this will help the program?
I hope it works. Right now, our program is pretty small, but we have some really talented people, and it would be great to attract even more people.
So, how will this plan help?
Well, if we go to these off-campus events and other people hear us and think we're really good, we might be able to get some new students interested in coming to this university, to be a part of our music program and perform in our choir concerts.
You're right. I hadn't really thought about that.
Okay, guys. So you will now have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. Well, before that, this is the question. The man expresses his opinion about the change described in the article. Briefly summarize the change, then state his opinion about the change and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. Now you will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. Okay. So, does anyone want to try? Is there anybody who would like to try using the template? Remember, it's gonna be your first try, so don't worry, don't stress out. It's fine if you make mistakes, it's fine if you don't finish in time. That's what we're here for, right? We're here to learn. So would anyone like to try? Okay, let's just talk about it a bit. So the student is against or in favor? I'm sorry, yeah, against or in favor of the idea?
In favor?
Favor.
Right, so she supports the idea of what? What was the change?
Getting the choir of campus.
Exactly. So taking the choir off campus, right? Taking the choir to do off-campus singing competitions. So that is a change. Now, first of all, was it she or he? He, right? So first of all, he explains that. What does he explain in the first part?
It will increase the quality of the choir's performance.
Exactly, great. And I think that that was also mentioned in the reading, right? So when you have that, when both of them agree, so when the student agrees with what was said in the reading, you can maybe use this adverse and say, first of all, he explains that this will indeed increase the quality of the choir's performance. Since why will this increase the quality of the choir's performance? Hints? Students who are in the choir are going to be more motivated, right? They're going to go to compete with other universities. So they're definitely going to be motivated to practice more, right? And that's, well, practice makes perfect, I think they say, right? Something like that. And in addition, what was the second reason? In addition, he believes that, what was the second?
It will attract more people.
Exactly. In addition, he believes that this will totally attract more people, or that it is right that this change will attract more people, right? Now, why is it gonna attract more people?
And other people will be able to hear the choir, and if they like what they hear, they will be able to join.
Exactly. So great. That's it. Now we have our answer, right? We've covered pretty much everything that you need to complete in the template. Would anyone like to try now? Still don't know? Really? Okay, Laura, great. So please, you may start speaking now.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry.
Yes, go again.
Okay. The student conversation supports the idea of the choir entering off-campus singing competitions. First of all, he explains that it will increase the quality of the choir's performance, since students will be able to rehearse more often because they will be competing against other universities, and this will motivate them to practice even more, and practice makes perfect. In addition, he believes that it will be great to attract more people, since other people will hear the choir's performance, and they would, if they like what they hear, they will be able to join the choir. Those would be the two main reasons why the student feels this way.
Great. Nice. That was perfect. Really. What do you guys think? That was really good, wasn't it? So nice. That's exactly how you do it. So, normally I'd say, well, maybe you have extra time, but honestly, that's fine because even though she had some extra time, she finished her response and it was complete. It was an in-depth response. It contained all of the relevant information. It was well explained. So I really don't have any comments. I don't know, like I really liked it. One thing that I like to emphasize and that I forgot to say, Lara was using the future tense, right? Make sure that you do that as well. That's one mistake that some students commit. They make mistakes with the tenses. Remember, this is a plan for the future that could or will be implemented in the future. So you try to use modal verbs, right? You can use will, and maybe to use more, you can use other modals as well. You can use could, might, may, going to if you want. But in general, it should be in the future. You can use some conditionals in there. The ideas were well connected. The ideas that were said in the reading were reinforced, and they were explained with what the student said. So I really have no comments. Well done, Laura. What do you guys think? Does anyone have any comment, any question? No? Okay, guys. So then that's gonna be it for today's class, but remember tomorrow we'll be practicing, so we'll be doing as many questions as we can, and I'll be giving you guys more tips, right? So we'll see more suggestions, more tips on how to improve your responses, and we'll practice. Do you guys have any questions then before we go? Everything clear? Everything all right? Yes. And please don't forget today's survey. It's already on your screens. And once you guys are done, you're free to go. I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, teacher.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you, teacher.
you.
Bye, teacher.
Bye, teacher.